Bart Loeser. His speech title is Maintaining Productivity in Precarious Times. He's going to speak from 5 to 7 minutes. And go right ahead and take it away. He's working out of, is this from the Innovative Planning?
It is Innovative Planning
and Connecting with Storytelling.
Yes, great.
All right, very good. All right, go ahead, Bart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, my fellow Toastmasters and guests.
Yes.
We live in precarious times. Now, I don't have to tell you that. Everybody in the world knows it's perhaps the most precarious of all times we've ever lived. Things we never expected have happened. We are in the ultimate crisis in the world. Now, most people don't like crises, but I'm a fan. Now, there are benefits to fighting fires, to these crises. And some of the biggest benefits are the ones that I love most. You may be familiar with some. First of all, when you're in crisis, focus is easy. I'm a person with ADD. The biggest problem I ever have is focusing on details. I hate it. Even when I have to read something, I love the fact that my computer will actually read it out to you so that I can read physically while it's speaking to me so I can stay focused on the words. I am bad. But the good thing about these precarious times is when you're in a crisis, focus is easy. First of all, one of the things that you could do is you only have to deal with that fire that's in front of you. The best part of that is you have the perfect excuse when your other work is not getting done. You said, I'm in a crisis. I got to focus on this. And the best part of all is that everything else that's stressing you out in your life no longer matters. At least while you're in the midst of the crisis. It never goes away, but at least during a crisis, you don't have to focus on that. But one thing people do expect is that you stay productive, even in crisis times. So how do you maintain productivity in these crazy times? It is difficult, but where you have to start is you have to challenge the myths. The three big myths about crisis is they're unexpected, they're uncontrollable, and understandably stressful. Well, who could be productive in that kind of a situation? Actually, you can by addressing each of these myths one by one. First of all, most people think crises are unexpected, but actually we can see a crisis building. We just tend to procrastinate until it's too late. Most disasters are a result of ignoring potential problems. And then we let them grow from a minor leak that's in the dam to an entire flood that destroys all of New Orleans or Houston or many of the other cities where we've seen this happen after some unprecedented amount of rain. The whole point is we know this is happening, especially with the weirding of weather that's going on. It's like panic seems to come about when you have an adult elephant now rampaging through your meeting room. Imagine if you had an elephant in this room right now, what are you going to do? You've got to get it out of the room. But the only way you can get it out of the room is you're going to have to shoot it and then cut it up into smaller pieces. I know a lot of people don't like that. It sounds kind of cruel. The elephant doesn't like it. And quite frankly, PETA's probably going to be calling us with big, big complaints. But the point is that it's difficult to deal with that elephant in the room. You've got to focus on getting yourself safe, getting that elephant out of there, and it's not easy to do. But it does make one wonder, if you look at the room you're in right now, where did this elephant come from in the first place? Because the whole fact is, elephants just don't appear full size. The only way it could have gotten into your room is someone had to walk it in there when it was small and everyone ignored it until it grew into something that got out of control. So the whole point is that we can expect and actually plan for crisis so that it doesn't have to blow up in our faces the way it usually does. But a lot of people believe the second myth, which is what gets us into trouble. They believe it's uncontrollable. There's nothing I can do. Well, actually, its impact depends on how you choose to respond to the crisis. You can actually take some control and make good choices. Here are some things that you can do. First of all, you have to assess three things. This is the key to getting some control in crisis. Number one, you have to consider the urgency. When does this need to be done? Or you might see this in hospitals where they always talk about in triage, first of all, stop the bleeding. So stop anything from going bad so you can at least get some control. But assess this urgency. Do we need to do this now? Second, assess the importance or the impact that this problem or crisis is creating. So one way of assessing its impact is deciding, if I didn't do this, would it be a bad thing? Or if I did do this, would it be a good thing? Because if I did this and it didn't matter, then it's really not important. So things can be urgent, but not necessarily important. So you have to determine, first of all, whether it's urgent, but then don't do anything until you've also determined whether it's important. If it's both urgent and important, then focus your time on that. The third factor to controlling a crisis is determining its complexity. How do you deal with this? Do you have the resources that you need? Do you have the capacity to take care of this? Do you have the mobility to be able to make decisions? If the answers to any of these questions are no, then this may not be a crisis that you can get much control over. But the point is if we can look at these factors and take care of them, you can actually garner control, which would take your stress down. Now, once you do have some control, then you want to create a plan of action. And you guys have probably all heard of the SMART plan. A way of measuring whether or not this is a good plan is by looking at 5 factors. The first is your plan specific? You have a very specific purpose or something you want to accomplish. What exactly do you plan to accomplish? Secondly, is it measurable? So in the SMART model, it's got to have some way to measure our progress. When do you start? Will people know that? When will you be halfway through? So you have to have some effective way to measure it. Then thirdly, you have to have some way of making sure that it's accurate, that what you're actually doing will solve the overall problem. Fourthly, it's got to be realistic. Do we have the capacity and those resources to get it done? If you don't have a realistic plan, it's not worth doing. And lastly, it has to be time bound. What's the timeline that you're going to use that's going to assess the progress? So it's got to be specific, measurable, accurate, realistic, and then time bound. And lastly, these crises are understandably stressful, but you don't have to let stress take you away and run amok. One way to take control of your stress is by stopping for a moment and assessing whether or not you need to take care of this crisis. And then before you begin a plan of action, get your stress level down. Several different things you can do is some deep breathing exercises. You could present positive affirmations and tell yourself, I know this can work, this will help. And you can set boundaries with people so that they don't get in the way of you getting this done. So stressful situations can be created in a crisis, but keep in mind, we can all deal with crises and still stay productive if you address the 3 myths. And then once you decide this is a crisis you have to handle, come up with a SMART plan that's going to help you get it done, keep the stress down, and remain productive. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you.